Hello?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's up, man?
Not so much.
How you doing today?
Alright. Alright, so stream's running. Let's do this. So when we talked earlier this week, you were talking about how you wanted to focus on like some drafting tips and figuring out like team comps and stuff like that.
Yes.
And so I didn't get a chance to look through any of your games because I didn't get your Dota buff from you. But like is there anywhere you'd want to start? Is there any particular games you want to look at the replays from? Any did you and your team just want to do a scrim and just have me watch over your shoulder, or what are you thinking?
We definitely don't have the guys on right now. I went ahead and posted my esports profile from Dota Buff.
Okay.
I should have sent that to you earlier. It's my fault. I pretty much I would like to look at like the competitive games we've played so far
Yeah.
and see like where my drafts could have improved.
Okay.
Because we've played against some of these teams multiple times, and I feel like part of our problem has been in the drafts.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a major point of improvement for us.
Okay.
Is within the drafting.
Yeah.
Like when to first pick, when to second pick, how to play around that sort of deal.
Okay. Yeah. Let me just. I'm just editing this stream here so that I can get my get your Dota buff up on the screen.
And these are just from 82L these past 2 seasons.
Yeah. Okay. Alright, for sure. So let's just look at these and we can just kind of go over it game by game, and I can just kind of let you know any obvious flaws I'm seeing, anything that stands out as.
Do you want to just start from the last match 10 days ago, PTFO versus WSS?
Yeah, that's the one I've got here. So
and to give you a little more insight right off the bat, so the current issue I feel like I personally have a lot is one of our best players is our mid laner,
Yep.
undefined, but he's a very, very limited hero pool. Like I'm talking Faceless Void, Arc Warden, Outworld Devourer, Gyro, like 4 heroes that confidently we can pick any day. Like he can play most heroes. He's a very talented player, but there's only a few heroes that like he practices regularly, so we kind of try to tailor our draft around that.
Yeah.
And that leads to some very wonky drafts, I feel.
Yeah, and honestly, as you describe those things, like I'm feeling like one of those is a mid hero.
Yeah.
So that definitely does seem to stand as a bit of a sticking point here. But let's just talk about kind of general drafting principles, and I can show you what like where your draft works with that and where it doesn't, and then we can talk about the specifics of your team and why you favor certain things over others. Because I mean, part of being a good competitive team is just having a diverse hero pool, right? So
right.
So I mean, there is going to come a point where, you know, if you have such a restrictive hero pool that you just can't build a good draft, or you can only build one good draft, and as soon as your opponents deal with that, then you end up in trouble, right? So
Right.
So I mean, like I said, well, I'll hit some of the general points from what I see in the draft, and then I'll get into a little bit more of the specifics. But so just looking at this game here, your laning setup is actually pretty okay. I think this patch a lot has been very much focused on the 4 position being active on the map, and since Dota
Exactly.
Buff has it marked as Tusk being roaming, it seems like you had him moving around a lot, which seems pretty solid. The only thing I would say though is that your the other team did a pretty good job at dealing with the vulnerability in their lanes, and you didn't pick as much stuff that can follow up or fight with a Tuskar, because from what I'm seeing, you've got Terrorblade and you've got Gyrocopter, both of which are basically just farming cores.
Exactly.
They have a very hard time following up and making plays early, as does Jakiro to a degree. Jakiro as a support is very good at like controlling a lane and then pushing down that lane and getting towers, but is
Exactly.
not amazing at being a playmaker and running around and catching heroes out of position. So the thing I'm seeing here is that you probably had one really open lane for your Tusk to attack, and that would have been the bottom safe lane. And even then, that's pretty dangerous because you're dealing with 2 heroes with single target stuns who can keep you off of them. And Puck is okay about ganking and dealing damage, but she needs levels. You know, the Puck needs to be level 6 before you can do anything there. So I'm definitely seeing like your team is probably being forced into being a lot more passive than they would otherwise like to be,
Right.
which means that your roaming is going to be a little bit weak. So, like this patch especially, I would try to only have one of these like AFK farming heroes, and then
Yeah.
build the rest of your draft around making sure that you can fight and be aggressive and smoke. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're
This series in particular, I feel like both games I had very major flaws in the drafting. Like I
yeah
did not want the Gyrocopter and the Terrorblade. It was just with the hero pulls we
yeah
had, it kind of put us in a corner.
yeah for sure
I kind of feel like I took the blame for that though, because like I
yeah
drafted the carry players heroes first, knowing what the mid heroes pull was,
yeah
and we were kind of punished for it.
yeah. And I mean,
And
and like, you know, like I said, this draft doesn't seem horrible on the surface. Like I think you guys have a reasonable power spike around the 15 to 20 minute mark. Gyro is going to be really powerful. Terrorblade kind of gets to the point where he has his first item or two and can start just pressuring towers. And Jakiro is a great early pusher. But like I said, you just kind of lack the ability to make plays, which means that you're not punishing 2 very greedy cores on the other team. You know, Luna and Ember Spirit are both heroes that need to get their first couple rounds of items up before they can do anything. And
right.
you know, if I saw your draft and maybe like, let me actually just open up the heroes window here, and I'll just have that for reference. Just looking at what you have in your toolkit, I would say that, like I said, your power spike is somewhere in that 15 to 25 minute mark, and your team here is just going to want to kind of blitz down towers, get on top of them, and just pressure the other team and take away their space, because Luna needs space, Ember needs space, Tide kind of needs space, he needs an item or two, and if you shut him out in lane, he's going to have to take that space from the other 2 cores. So what I would have maybe looked at to change up in this draft is having something that helps sustain your push and threaten team fight in the off lane. And Puck is okay at that, kind of on the fringe of
Every time I feel like we picked Puck, like I've seen it played a lot in the pro games, but I feel like we picked it just because we've seen it, not because it's something we were good at, we excelled at. Because every time we've played it, it's felt very underwhelming in the off lane.
Yeah, and I mean, like looking at his build here, he went like basically just tread straight into Blink, which is, you know, a very mid lane playmaker type of build. From the off lane, you're not going to be the one that's really starting the fights all the time. So
Yeah.
going for something more like a Veil of Discord, or even going into like what's the other item I've seen Pucks going first? I've seen some just going like Boots of Travel or like Yule Scepter first or something like that. Something that just kind of helps you be a little bit more impactful in early fights. But I do kind of agree that like Puck has a hard time fitting into this meta just because the offlane is so tough. You can definitely get levels and stuff there, but you need to find what Puck usually offers from other heroes. You need to find that initiation from somewhere else and let Puck follow up with the control from the Dream Coil and stuff.
Right.
So, you know, looking at this draft, I would have said like maybe getting more of a pushing sustain hero in the off lane. Something like a Beastmaster is pretty good. Brewmaster would have been very good as well. Underlord is also another great example. He kind of fills that same role that Tidehunter does, where you get a mechanism or some other item and you just push, get in lane, just shove stuff down. I feel like the puck is kind of low impact, and especially against the heroes that you're dealing with here. Like, doesn't have enough burst damage to deal with Tidehunter. Ember Spirit has his magical damage shield. Maybe you can get onto the Luna or the Vengeful Spirit, but you're going to need someone else to follow up the Tusk or the Gyrocopter, and it leaves the puck unable to make solo plays, which means that she can't transition into the mid game strongly. So yeah, just looking at this game, I think in general the draft and the laning setup was all right. I think you just kind of missed the mark on on adapting to your power spikes and finding lanes that you can impact as a 4 position or just in early rotations between all the lanes. I think this draft is definitely workable. I think if I think maybe another team could have handled this and taken it and made a win out of it, but there's definitely some things that you could adapt. And once again, like I said, I think the big sticking point of this draft in particular is that you've got 2 heavy farming cores. You've got your Terrorblade and your Gyrocopter, who are going to be cannibalizing each other's space and making it hard to really get ahead in the game. So jumping over to the first game in this series,
this first game, I'm sending you the match idea. Would you be interested in watching the replay? Because this game I had questions about.
Yeah, sure. I can definitely watch the replay for that.
Okay, so this game, to give you a little more details about this one. This game we ran a Drow strat, and I'm not a fan of Drow at all.
Yep.
Even in the best scenarios, she doesn't seem to ever work anymore. She's been nerfed too many times. But we ran a Drow strat this time, and we broke high ground in 18 minutes, I believe.
Yeah.
But they still came back and won it. So I kind of wanted to see if you'd be interested in watching through this, kind of telling us where we went wrong, because I felt like we were playing together well. We pushed, we hit our timings, but we still ended up falling short when it came to actually.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the net worth graph here, and you guys are just steadily increasing until 30 minutes, and then it looks like you got wiped plus a buyback, so you lost 6 heroes in one fight, and that basically swung the net worth advantage back into the other team's favor in one shot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just giving this a glance, I obviously haven't watched the replay. It just seems like you took one really, really horrible fight, and that was enough to just turn the game. So, just seeing that, I don't think that your strategy or even maybe your gameplay was flawed up until that point. It might not have been a fully systemic issue. It might have just been one big blunder, which does occasionally happen. I mean, you should obviously try to avoid it, but yeah, looking at just kind of the draft setup here, I think you've got a pretty reasonable draft overall. I don't think draft strats are horrible. I just think they're very particular and need to be handled in a very certain way, and they definitely need to be run against the right lineups, especially just kind of seeing the pick order here. You've got 2 heroes on the enemy team that are incredibly good against Drow picked in the first phase, Clockwork and Venge. Because she can just swap the Drow out, pull her into a bad position, and then she loses her aura and gets blown up.
Control her, right?
Yeah, and exactly. Once the Clockwork gets on her, she can gust the Clockwork out of cogs, but as soon as he gets a 4-staff, it's just a non-factor. He just chases her down, walks on top of her, and she gets nothing done.
Right.
But I do think the idea of comboing a Drow with a Dusa is really strong. Having the Witch Doctor is a great idea because it provides control, it provides heal and sustain for the pushes, which is something I was talking about in the other draft. And on top of that, Witch Doctor has disgusting base damage, so adding the Drow Aura on top of that gives him a really good, just a really nice bonus for the laning phase. But again, that said, I think your team, or the other team, just already de facto, without even knowing that you were going Drow, had heroes that were just really good against a Drow strat.
Yeah, we picked the Drow into it.
Yeah. So, looking at, even Underlord is pretty good. If he gets a Pit of Malice and then gets a, what's the fucking item? The, Rod of Atos. He didn't go for it this game, but the Yule Scepter kind of operates in the same way. He can keep her rooted for a good 10 seconds straight. And then Juggernaut, again, is really good. And actually, this Jug's build was pretty bad. I think if I saw a Drow strat as Jug, I would go for either a Shadow Blade or a Blink Dagger early to just get on the back lines and just Omni Slash.
One of the things that helped us, I think, perform so well early on was I don't know why, but they chose to run an aggro try into our try lane.
Yeah.
So it was bad. It was like we completely shut down the Jug, but this Mirana, obviously, kept them in it.
Yeah, and that's actually an interesting point because quite often, if I I think if I had seen your tri lane, I probably would have called for an aggro as well, because Drow is incredibly weak in the laning phase, especially when there's 3 heroes on her. You land one stun and she just dies. And Jug is a pretty good hero for aggro tri lanes as well. You get the healing ward, you can keep yourself sustained. I think the sticking point is that is just that both teams had 4 positions that would rather be roaming. So,
right.
Keeping an Earth Spirit there on your lane and keeping the Clockwork there on their lane, it means that you kind of have these 2 melee heroes that are going to be like awkwardly dancing and looking for their opening. And if either one of them steps a little bit too far forward, the ranged heroes from the other team are going to catch them and make their lives miserable. So that's something that I kind of anticipate to see when we watch the replay here, but yeah, I think their idea to aggro wasn't bad. I think the execution might have been off. Something that I think is probably a common error for teams that amateur level teams that try to run these aggro strats is that they don't control the lane well. So what I imagine I'm going to see is that they're going to push this lane really hard, put it under your tower, and you guys are just going to farm really safely and then find kills whenever they come up. And I mean, maybe that's not the case, but that's kind of just what I'm familiar with. The other thing that works out well for them is that when they aggro here, they put Underlord against Tidehunter, which is a really, really good matchup. Tide actually does pretty well against their tri lane, so I think you guys having that is something they wanted to avoid.
I believe the Underlord won that lane pretty handedly too.
Yeah, and I mean that's just what Underlord does. Like, he has a percentage health nuke that he just throws on waves, and from that he gets bonus last hit damage. And Tide's only advantage is that he has a high health pool and he reduces the other hero's damage. So having an Underlord there, just he's always going to have a last hit advantage of 30 or 40 last hit damage, and that just means that Tide's just going to get nothing there. He's just going to get denied to shit, and the Underlord's going to get off to a good start. So regardless of how that tri-lane versus tri-lane went, they also opened themselves up to win one more lane by doing that, whereas I think it probably would have gone roughly even had they flipped it the other way around. The Mirana versus the Medusa matchup, that's actually an odd one. I don't see Mirana as getting played very much, if at all, anymore, and I think that hero is actually pretty weak, so I'm curious to see how that lane went and how this Mirana got off to such a crazy game, but I'm sure we'll see that in the replay. Yeah,
if I can recall correctly, the Medusa performed fairly well against the Mirana in lane.
Yeah.
The Mirana, we thought, was shut down because we've played against this team before. We do know their mid laner is their all-star. If you look at the replays of both games, you'll see that.
Yeah.
It's just, so we figured we'd try to focus around, beating him, and we figured we did, but
yeah.
He managed to find a lot of farm.
Yeah, and that's the mark of a good player, right? Like, if you have a bad lane, finding a way to stabilize and impact the map in other ways is really important. So, kind of what I'm anticipating to see from what you're telling me here is that, the Deuce will probably beat him on last hits. He's probably down 10 to 20 or something at that 8 to 10 minute mark. And then he just kind of says, fuck it, I don't want to deal with this lane anymore, and he just spends the rest of the game roaming, just throwing arrows at people. And for a Mirana, that can either be really, really good or really, really bad. Like, he can land those arrows and get off to a great start, and just murder everyone and just live off of kill gold, or he can do the exact opposite and miss everything and waste all of his time walking around the map while the Medusa farms, and then the game turns to shit.
Right.
So yeah, I'm sure like we'll see a lot of those rotations and arrows thrown and stuff, and we'll kind of pick those apart as they come and just kind of see where that Mirana's finding his gold and where he's getting off to a good start. But But yeah, I think that's most of like the surface analysis I can do just looking at the Dota buff here. But yeah, let's hop into the replay and I'll just try to break it down as we go and see what we got here. What's that match ID? There we go. Okay, just gonna mute myself real quick. Gotta.
Yeah, no problem.
Alrighty.
And did you want to watch through this draft or skip through it and get to landing phase?
I'll kind of fast forward the draft and just see if there's anything I notice, but I think we got a reasonable idea of how the draft went just looking at the Dota buff there. Like I said, I think the pick order was, yeah, I think the thing that stood out in the draft really was that was that you saw a few heroes that were really solid against Drow, and then you picked Drow straight into it. I think actually the rest of your picks up until that point were pretty good. I think Tidehunter, Earth Spirit, Witch Doctor, Medusa are all actually pretty damn solid against what you're seeing in their team. I would have just thrown a different carry in the mix there.
Like for instance, like what would you have recommended there? Like we didn't know what to do. That's where we kind of faltered. We didn't know what to do for the carry.
So the thing that I'm looking at here is that your team has really solid team fight, and they also have really good tower siege. You're gonna have the heal sustain from Witch Doctor. You're gonna have like when Dusa gets online, she'll be doing all right. And Tidehunter is kind of really good at pressuring towers because you kind of just build that mechanism. You have Ravage ready, and you just walk into a tower, and no one wants to TP into that to fight.
Right.
So getting something that creates a lot of tower pressure is a really good idea. And then looking at the other team's heroes, you've got a lot of heroes that are just very in your face, very on top of you, and very aggressive. So looking at something that can kind of stand their ground and fight back is a good way to do it. So things I would have looked at there would have been potentially maybe a Lycan, maybe a safe lane DK is a little bit weird, but could definitely have been run there. If the other team didn't have Juggernaut, I would say Juggernaut. Maybe even like just looking through the heroes list, trying to think of other things. Even like a Sven or a Troll Warlord wouldn't have been too bad. Those heroes don't fit super well, and Sven would kind of cannibalize the Drow Rangers farm. But like a Troll Warlord gives you a lot of tower siege, gives your team a ton of damage, and if Clockwork hooks into a Troll, he just kills the Clockwork. If Juggernaut jumps on the Troll, he just spins and throws the axe spin and just kills. So things like that, things that are kind of tanky that would have some direct fighting capabilities. Phantom Lancer would have been a good one as well.
Would have been too greedy?
What's that?
You don't think something like the Sven Phantom Lancer not Phantom Lancer, but Sven that would be too greedy with the Medusa already?
Yeah, well that's what I said there was like I think the Sven and the Medusa kind of would have cannibalized each other's farm, which might not have been great. So the Sven probably wasn't the best idea. It was just kind of one that fits the type of game that you're looking to play. I think actually, what was the hero I was just looking at? What did oh, something just came to mind, and I thought it was like the perfect pick, and then I lost it.
How do you think a PA would have been there? Too poor pick?
I think PA is
something we were talking about, but we thought she was kind of even if it's a good game for PA, it's just kind of underwhelming.
Yeah, PA is pretty underwhelming in general, and I mean honestly, she doesn't do great against Underlord. She matches up all right against Jug, but it is very swingy one way or the other. If Jug gets off to a good start, then the PA has no hope of coming back.
Right, but same way other way around.
Yeah, so actually I think PL was probably your pick there. Just looking at what they have to deal with illusions, they have next to nothing, especially at the point that you picked that, right? Because you didn't see the Marana. So if you look at their heroes, like Vengeful Spirit, super single target. Clockwork, super single target, and he relies on being able to lock a hero down, and PL just gets away from that.
Right.
Underlord, he can clear illusions, but like you just leave him to last. You just don't worry about him. They're kind of a non-interaction between the two of them. And Juggernaut does really bad against PL. PL shits on Juggernaut. So, and I think the PL kind of fits the timing windows that you want to hit with this draft, right? You want to make space for the Dusa by fighting with your other 4 heroes. And so PL, Witch Doctor, Earth Spirit, and Tidehunter hitting a tower as 4 heroes together actually seems pretty solid to me. I think it's a little bit low damage, but for the most part, that lineup would do really well. One other hero that I think would do okay in that scenario would have been a Faceless Void. You do have 2 melee heroes on the team that couldn't really impact the Chronosphere, but you do have a Witch Doctor that can ulti on top of it, and later on in the game, Dusa can do a ton of damage into a Chrono.
Right.
And so I think a safe lane Void would have been alright there. Might have had a hard time if it had to lane against the Underlord, because it's hard to get that, but that would have been on your supports to kind of keep the Underlord off the lane so that the Void can get his farm. So yeah, I think any of those heroes would have been alright. But yeah, I think, like I said, like the thing is that the other team's going to be coming into you. They have very aggressive heroes that are going to use positioning advantages. They're going to have leap, they're going to have swap, they're going to have hook shot, and they're going to have Omni Slash. So they're going to have a bunch of abilities that are getting right on top of you. And so picking a Drow who relies on being in the backline and being safe is something that you're a little bit scared of. So I'm cracking open the replay here. I don't know if you want to just like watch on your own and we can just call out timestamps, or if you want to just pop on the stream and just see what I'm seeing. But
actually, yeah, I'll if you want to send me.
Okay, yeah,
I could always type in your name, actually, huh?
Yeah, it's just twitch.tv/Cptn.Canuck Dota.
Yeah. Oh. I'll pull you up.
Okay.
So we're on the same page. Do you have a delay?
I don't have a delay, but there is a natural delay of about 10-ish seconds, I think, so you might be seeing stuff a little bit behind, but hopefully I'll be rambling about stuff long enough that you see what I'm looking at by the time I'm in the middle of talking about it.
Right.
10 seconds remaining. 5 seconds remaining.
Alright, so just skipping through the draft here. Actually, so these early bans here, the Tinker, the Zeus, the Nyx Assassin, what are those for?
Okay, so we've done our homework on these guys quite a bit.
Yep.
Played against them before. Last time on their Dota buff, this guy, everything they do is run master, right?
Yeah.
He's a great guy, great player. Zeus is they almost always go to it. It's like their main comfort pick. They've got like an 87% win rate with it. No, it's not a great hero, but it works for them.
Yeah.
So we figured our thought process was we were gonna ban out Master, win that lane, and then win the game through that.
Okay.
So Nyx, once again, major comfort hero for them. Pretty much that was our opening bans. We're just taking out some of their comfort heroes.
5
Yeah.
seconds remaining.
Okay. So
Radiant team.
So I think the Nyx and the Tinker bans are okay. I really hate Tinker, and I would fucking ban it out. Like I despise that hero.
Here's garbage.
I think Zeus, like despite their heavy win rate with it, I think it has some very clear counters and things that do very well against it. So I think I think that's one of those things that you can kind of just leave in the pool as bait, and you can say, "Come on, I dare you to pick it," and then just consider it in your draft, right? Like just make sure you have things that deal with it. You have a pipe carrier. You have like, you know, a magic immune carry like a Juggernaut or something that can just blow him up and ruin his day. There's ways to kind of like answer those types of picks, because a lot of times, like even if a team's solid on it, if you are aware of that and you counter it, it could actually be more effective than just banning it and making the play something else, you know?
Right. So like, what would, in your opinion, what would be like, what's the pick? Like, you know, this team's picking Zeus.
You know what? Honestly, I would just make sure that
we didn't really know.
So answering Zeus is a little bit less about one pick winning it and more just making sure you have the tools to deal with it. So, like I said, having a pipe carry on your team is super important. So getting a hero like perhaps a Centaur or an Underlord or a you know, like an
Would the
axe.
Tide be good in that scenario? Because
Something
he,
like Yeah, Tide is okay. I think Tide typically wants to favor the mechanism instead of the pipe. But you can go pipe on that hero, and I think it's all right. Omni Knight is another good one. Omni Knight's super popular in the meta right now, and he has repel and can build into a pipe later on. So that might have been a good answer to that. And all of those heroes are super flexible, super strong heroes that just do well in the meta right now, right? Like any of those just work.
right.
So, picking up something like that is key. And I mean that's just one part to the equation. Like I said, it's kind of a team effort. So get a pipe carrier, but then get a 4 position that can just destroy mid constantly. Earth Spirit is a decent pick for that, but Zeus is basically weak in his lane because he has no escape spells. He has no way to, get out of Clockwork Cogs. He has no way to run back to his tower if he gets slowed. He has no blinks. He has no repositioning spells. He just kind of relies on standing on his high ground and throwing his spells. So if you can get a hero that gets onto him, like I said, Tusk, Earth Spirit, Clockwork, any of those are really, really good at dealing with Zeus, and then you just shit on his early game and make sure that he can't get into a solid position with items in the late game.
Right.
Then on top of that, like I said, getting a carry that is either a natural BKB carrier or has magic immunity built into their kit is very good, because you know that one of their heroes is going to be completely and totally mitigated by that magic immunity pickup, right? Like, so if you have a Juggernaut, if you have Naix is pretty weak right now, but he's kind of an example of what I'm talking about. You can also go into something like, a Sven or a Razor, because those are heroes that just, like I said, naturally carry BKBs. Even an Anti-Mage later on is alright, because he's got the magic shield, he's really good, especially Zeus, like, super high mana pool, jump on him, burst down his mana void, and you kill the entire team.
Anti-Mage is a pretty good example of a hero who's like a major point of argument, I guess you could say, in our team, because our carry player absolutely loves Anti-Mage, but I personally have no faith.
Yeah.
The way he's been nerfed, there's not a time I'd ever pick it, even if it's the perfect Anti-Mage game.
Yeah, and Anti-Mage is all right. I think the big thing is that this meta is very brawly early on. There's a lot of early fights. So if you're going to pick an Anti-Mage, you need to make sure that your other 4 heroes are entirely capable of taking a team fight on their own early on.
Right.
And
4v5 let him farm.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you need to be able to make sure that every single hero on the rest of the team has stuns and damage. So, like, an Anti-Mage lineup, like, I'm just kind of looking at the hero list and looking at the draft and just trying to think of, like, things like, looking at your 3 heroes right now, I wouldn't consider Anti-Mage, because you just don't have enough damage between the 3 heroes that you put on the field right now. Like, Clockwork, Underlord are both going to survive basically an entire spell combo from these 3 heroes. And so you need to get a lot of damage out of your carry and your mid here in this draft. So I wouldn't even consider it here, but something that I'm talking about for an Anti-Mage lineup would be like maybe a DK mid, maybe an Underlord off lane, maybe like, a 4 position like Doom or an Elder Titan, and then like, a 5 position like Disruptor or Lion or Witch Doctor or something like that. Something that has like stuns and damage. And then when you get that type of thing lined up, you can go into towers, you can confidently push, like I said, like a DK or something. As soon as he gets level 6, you just kind of Dragon Form, you hit a tower. You get those rest of those heroes behind him with stuns, you set up for a team fight, you take it, you win, and all the while, like, you're creating so much pressure, and the Anti-Mage just has a whole map to farm. And honestly, that's kind of what you do with Dusa as well. Like, you want to fight with your other 4 heroes and let Dusa farm, because Medusa's alright in being safe in her lane because of Mana Shield, but what she really excels at is just farming stacks, constantly getting gold, and then showing up at 20 minutes with 3 items and just winning the game.
Right.
So yeah, even like looking at where you're at in your draft right now, you've got, like I said, 3 heroes that are all right for early setup and fighting, but they don't have a ton of damage. And so looking at the other team, you're going to have to create space for the Dusa by getting that out of your carry. So looking at your carry picks, like I said here, I think actually the CK ban from them was all right, because the CK would have been pretty solid. It deals well with the Juggernaut. It's got the illusions like we talked about with the PL, and it just does a fuck ton of damage and creates a ton of early pressure. So again, those early pressure and carries that can hit hit lanes, get towers, and make a lot of space are kind of what you're looking for here.
Right.
All right, so let's skip it on through the rest of the draft here. I think we've got a pretty good idea of where it could have been improved. I am actually pretty shocked that they went with the Mirana here. I think that hero's been so out of the meta for a while.
It performed well.
Yeah.
It performed very well against their team.
Prepare for battle.
All right.
Mirana's always, every game she's played in core, it's always the same thing. She's kind of like that sleeper hero. You don't realize how much damage it's doing till all your heroes are dead. Then you realize Mirana just pumped out, 3k damage in that fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is a case to be made, like with her new talents. Like she has a really good physical damage build up. She gets a damage talent, she gets an attack speed talent, then she can later get a mana break talent, and then it gets pretty crazy. She's actually like she does a ton of damage if she's allowed to do a ton of damage, but
right. I feel like personally this game she was like every fight.
Yeah.
You'll see she pretty much just stands in the back and just waylays on us.
Yeah. So actually, let me back this up a little bit here. So so your Tidehunter never saw the Underlord bottom. Okay, so first thing I would say right here is like, make sure that a ward gets to your offlaner. Because if your Tidehunter had an Obs ward, actually, do you guys just have a ward in stock? Where's your other one? Did it go to...
Earth Spirit has it.
Oh, Earth Spirit. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so make sure a ward gets to your offlaner, because already, if your Tidehunter had walked down here and placed a safety ward to, watch for supports and stuff, you would have seen the Underlord bottom, and you would have known it was an aggro lane coming into you before, like, already. At 0 seconds, you would have seen and known that you were about to face an aggro lane. Which allows you to prepare a little bit better. It means that you can rotate if you're scared of it. You can just put the drow bottom to just deal with that and just stay away from it. Or you can, or you can just posture your heroes a little better, make sure that your Earth Spirit isn't, getting caught by sitting in the trees looking for an offlaner to hit. I don't think any negative consequences came from that in this scenario, but it's just something to watch for in the future. Figuring out where your opponents are laning is really important.
Right.
So yeah, lane posture is all right here. I think your Witch Doctor could be a little bit further up attacking people. You're playing it very safe. You're avoiding conflict and just letting the Drow and the Jug last hit, which isn't too big a deal. But like I said, Witch Doctor has ridiculously good base damage, and so yeah, right what you're doing here, where you're just kind of attacking that bench and just chipping away at HP, is really important, because tri-lane versus tri-lane is always just a regen battle. It's just whoever has the most, whoever has the most tangos typically comes out of a tri-v-tri scenario ahead.
Right. So I think because I was the one playing the Witch Doctor,
yeah.
And the carry was saying exactly what you're saying, and I believe you're both correct. I believe the thought process was I didn't want that clockwork getting behind us.
Yeah.
So I was constantly dealing with him.
Yeah, for sure. I think like, okay, this. Oh wow, is he gonna get away with this? Okay, I'm like watching this the Earth Spirit go for the bounty rune here, and yeah, he takes a ton of damage from battery assault. I think that might have been a little bit of a overzealous roll down there. It means his escape ability is on cooldown going for that bounty rune, which is pretty risky. And then he gets caught a little bit too far up here, and that's first blood. Okay. So yeah, this is kind of what I was talking about at the start. Was like, I think I said this when I was looking at the draft on Dota buff. It's like you've got these two awkward melee heroes that both want to be roaming up here in the lane instead, and because of that, whichever one steps out of line first is going to be the one that gets caught, and that's exactly what we just saw happen there. Is Earth Spirit got a little bit too far up, and then there was a stun, there was cogs, and then a Blade Fury on top of it, and it just
So like, if you're running a safe tri-lane like this, you wouldn't pick something like a Tusk, Earth Spirit, Clock. You pick something different.
I would and I think this is like I think neither team knew that they were going to be in this scenario until like the very end of the draft, right? Like I think they only decided to aggro because they saw the Drow Ranger. So they're in just as bad a scenario as you are. And actually, as we're talking about this, the Clockwork walks up a little bit too far, gets Malefice, gets a bunch of damage thrown at him. He's going to get dropped down to like 200 HP here. Actually, oh, maybe not so much. He tangoed through a lot of the Malefice damage. But yeah, it's definitely a bit of an awkward scenario for both of these heroes. So actually, what I probably would have done instead is just leave a duo lane. Because I think Drow and Witch Doctor together are pretty secure in this lane. I don't think they run the risk of dying unless they're super far out of position. And I would have just used the Earth Spirit to just go hit the other lanes. Like, try to find a kill on Underlord early, or just harass the Mirana until another support comes to deal with that. I think if you can actually force the 4 positions off the lane, that works out better for you. And it's gonna be what the other team finds to be optimal. Even though you guys are coming out of it ahead. Right. Because putting 3 heroes in a lane against 2 heroes, if you can't find kills, you're just soaking each other's XP for nothing. Right. And so this Jug is actually just going to get under-leveled while you and him are trading last hits pretty much evenly. So I think that's actually probably what I would have done. I would have just used the Earth Spirit on the map and just not been afraid of what they're going to throw at you. Because it is a scary-looking lane, but it relies fully on them getting into a danger zone, right? Like, they have to be able to get that magic missile off and then get that Clockwork in melee range to get his stuns off. And with Drow Gust and Witch Doctor's Paralyzing Cask, these 2 heroes can actually keep each other safe really reasonably without the Earth Spirit. And actually, you see this here is like the Clockwork's trying to approach and the Drow just kind of walks away from the Battle Fury. And in that, or the Blade Fury rather, and in that scenario, the Earth Spirit helped secure a kill, but it totally wasn't necessary to survive. So, I think this, oh, actually, okay, yeah, so the Clockwork just throws himself in there. So yeah, I think that play actually plays out pretty similar, maybe without the kills, but your heroes get out safe without the Earth Spirit there, and you could be winning other lanes at the same time.
Right. Because if I remember correctly, we won this lane pretty handedly,
yeah.
But like mid and off lane, we didn't put any sort of pressure on. We just focused everything on the safe lane.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there was just another example right here, you'll probably see it in a second on the stream, of like, they approached, they tried to kill the Drow with low HP, you threw a cask, and just GG, they couldn't follow it up, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I think your lane is actually a lot more safe than you give it credit for, and because of that, you could be doing a lot more on the map, but looks like you're going to find a Clockwork here, that's good.
Yeah. It was just way out of position right there.
Yeah, and again, like this, back to what I said, it's like, you know, it's all about which melee hero walks out of position first, and your Earth Spirit did it first, but then the Clockwork did it twice after that, so it's like, so I think in this lane, these heroes are actually almost better just not being there, right? And creating pressure elsewhere. Like, if I was this Clockwork, I wouldn't even bother in this lane. Like, I would maybe show up to try to secure it for a little bit, but then I would walk mid and just sit on the Medusa and just make her life hell. You know, try to set up arrows for Mirana and stuff, because, like, your Deuce is going completely uncontested here. She's going to have super quick Mask of Madness. Ugh, sorry. And then, and, like, you know, this Tide versus Underlord lane is pretty... It's hard to get in on, but, like, Tide right now is sitting at about half health. With Underlord's Firestorm, if Tide was into Cogs, he's just dead. So I think this Clock is definitely misplaying by like sticking so hard to tri-lane. And I think actually even at this point where your team has gotten a few kills, I would have just called off the tri-lane. Like, I would have just swapped it out, put the Juggernaut bottom, and just tried to
right,
and just tried to play the rest of the game.
They kept running the tri-lane at us, and we kept just beating him out, beating him out.
Yeah, I think for the first few levels it's not a bad idea, but once you get behind in this lane, there's no coming back. So don't like continue to try it. Just try to get your Jug some farm, right? Like, I think if we're looking at the last hits here, your Drow is 26-4, the Juggernaut is 14-7. So this tri-lane has clearly not worked for them. The only thing really left for them to do is just, you know, stop trying and just get their hero farm and just try to meet you guys again in the late game. But they're not doing that, and they're wasting a lot of time. So I think this contributes to how you guys got off the ground pretty early in this game.
And I think from this point it gets pretty docile for about five minutes or so before we start going.
Yeah, that's kind of what I would expect.
Actually, maybe not, because we do get. I believe we take our first T3 at 18 minutes.
Okay.
Really
Yeah, so I'm gonna speed this up just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, just keep an eye on like where all of this is happening. I think lanes tend to kind of be decided in the first few minutes of the lane, so it's like once you get to this point, it's just kind of more of the same, even if there are kills and stuff. But yeah, like at this point, their supports are rotating, and the Juggernaut is left completely alone. Like he's actually playing as an offlane Juggernaut. He's just sitting under the tower, hoping that he can get experience, which is definitely not what you want to be doing with your Jug. And actually, he's got a Blade Fury, so he's going to get out of this one okay. They get your Dusa with that rotation. I think that's something that you guys probably could have read as soon as you saw that Juggernaut just kind of sitting alone. You know, so supports are mid, Dusa get back. That's fine. So yeah, you rotate in the Tide Hunter, he gets caught. So actually, let's slow this down here. So the Mirana is 8 last hits behind the Medusa. Medusa's got 10 denies over Mirana as well, though. So in terms of levels, the Dusa has almost a full half level on the Mirana here. And net worth reflects that pretty much 1-to-1. So even with those couple kills, Mirana is behind. She's not horrifically, unrecoverably far behind, but she is behind, like you talked about. Dusa gets into farming jungle. That's all good and solid. But yeah, okay. So this is exactly what I was talking about earlier. Is like as soon as Mirana realizes that her lane is kind of broken down, she's just gonna go hit the map. And this is the first thing you see happen. Is as soon as that fight happens, she goes right up to top and she chucks an easy arrow in and gets a kill on the Drow. And if or are you? Oh wow, they. Oh okay, they do get the Witch Doctor as well. So she finds herself a double kill. So again, she's about 20 last hits behind the Medusa, but she's actually only about 600 gold behind in terms of net worth. And I think this is probably what we're going to see happen for the next little while, is she's just going to spend the entire rest of the game on the map throwing arrows at people.
Meanwhile, Dusa is free farming.
Yeah, and meanwhile Deuce is free farming. So that's actually okay for you guys, just as long as you can dodge the ganks, right?
One thing to get your opinion on is one thing that the carry player was mentioning to the mid laner a lot was he thought his build was way too passive. And
yeah, Deuce's build?
Yes, like right now you may not be able to see, but later on, like I believe he went like Lincoln's, like it was a bunch of passive items when we were pretty far ahead.
Yeah.
And I wasn't too sure, honestly. I really didn't know.
So
because we had major issues closing it out.
Yeah, so Lincoln Sphere to me screams horrible. Because there is one spell on the other team that it blocks, and that's Vengeful Spirit's Magic Missile. If Juggernaut Omni slashes you, it only blocks the first slash, and then every other one goes through. Clockwork has no spells, Underlord has no spells, and Mirana has no spells. So there's actually one singular spell that that Lincoln's blocks. So I think that's definitely a huge mistake. I don't think the concept of building passive items is technically super incorrect. But I think those passive items would have been better being something like a Scotty that just turns you into a giant beef stick that you just can't be gone on. Because I really don't think that Lincoln's accomplishes that. So Lincoln's is definitely a big, blatant, glaring mistake. But I don't think that that exact reason, it being like passive, is on point. I think Medusa is a hero that wants big passive items that make her beefy and hard to kill. It's just that those items should have come in a different form that game. They should have come in the form of like maybe a Manta style, maybe a Scotty, maybe a Hurricane Pike, or something of that sort, because she just wants to just stand there and deal damage. That's what Medusa does.
Right.
So yeah, just more passive farming. Medusa is very, very far ahead on last hits. She's 20 above the next highest person in the game. Her net worth,
like I said,
actually, her net worth is actually below that of the Underlord, and I think a lot of that is because. Okay, team fight here. Let's slow this down and back it up, and we can watch that. Her net worth is actually below the Underlords, and I think that's just because the other team has gotten a tower, and Underlord has been a part of 4 kills already, so he's caught up there, but I don't think that's too big a deal for you guys.
Do it with flair.
This is up a little bit too far, gets swapped. Should be fine to survive that, and she does. Her mana shield keeps her alive. You guys jump in and turn that really well. That was super solid. I think the other team's a little bit overzealous going on that, but actually, wait, I'm curious to know if that rocket flare saw you guys standing behind them, because yeah, you're all waiting 4 heroes behind this Dusa, which you definitely should be. But yeah, okay. So the Clockwork fires his rocket flare. If that was me as a Clockwork, I would fire it behind the Dusa, because there's no way a Dusa is just sitting there farming without a hero behind her, right? So you want to know what's there. So this is huge flub on their part. They throw themselves into just a shit scenario. You guys find a huge big fight off of that. That's awesome. You're off to a great start, and you can kill a lot of towers off of that.
Radiant's middle tower.
because that was something we were planning. Like we were planning on just like kind of forcing it there. We weren't expecting them to come at us, so we had the whole team there, all 5.
Yeah.
So when the 3 of them came onto her, those were just 3 give me kills.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean that's what I was talking
minutes.
about with Dusa just being a beef stick, right? Like you just want to survive that initial burst and make it so that the other team just has no way to get into a fight without going through Dusa. And you know, you kind of set it up there and used her as bait, and that her mana shield kept her alive long enough for you guys to retaliate. So that's exactly what you want to do. You guys split up for a second to farm here, and then I assume you're going to group back up as soon as Ravage is kind of back up and
Yes.
running.
So once we get our ults up, keep going.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much farm the Underlord got this game.
Yeah, he's off to a crazy start. He's got Guardian Greaves like about 15 minutes, which is huge. But I mean, if all of that farm was on the Juggernaut instead, like, could you imagine? Because the Jug has barely half of a Diffusal Blade right now, and he's trying to gank instead of farm. Like he's got less last hits than the Mirana, the Tidehunter, the Drow, the Underlord, and the Medusa. That is. He is the poorest core on the map, which is pretty unacceptable. Like I said, I think they needed to really adapt to that. They go for a smoke play here. They find absolutely nothing. You guys start grouping up because you got Tide ulti again. And looks like you're looking for top lane, which, yep, that's totally cool. In general, like, this is just a minor point, and I mean, in this game it just kind of played out that way because your heroes were postured up there. But in general, if you're deciding between top and bottom, I would look to take over the enemy's jungle tower first, because A, the shrine is a lot closer for the other team at top for Radiant. So if they wanted to defend this, they would have a shrine very nearby that they could TP onto to react, whereas the shrine on bottom jungle is a little further away from that tier 2, so you can get into that a little bit safer. Plus, you're just taking away the other team's farming space. So this isn't a huge problem. You got that tower super clean, and you're gonna go get bottom right after it. But just kind of a general point to make a call for as the captain would be like, maybe, you know, try to take away the enemy's jungle first, take away their safe spots, and force them to go into uncomfortable places like our jungle and like their top jungle to get the farm that they need. They're gonna go into Roche here. I think that's mostly okay. They're pretty weak right now. The only thing I would be worried about is this Clockwork hookshot, and you don't have vision of the Ancients area where he would be coming in from. But he's kind of dumb and hasn't seen it. You guys, oh yeah, you did deward this cliff here, so you know, well, okay, yeah, so they see it, it's a little bit too late. Roche, get out. That was pretty clean, that was pretty solid. And you've still got Ravage, so just go straight to bottom, keep the pressure up. And let's actually pop up the net worth charts here. Yeah, so looking at the net worth, you're about 4,000 ahead, and you're just over 2,000 ahead on XP. So basically, in every possible way, you guys are winning this game right now.
Right.
Drow gets picked up top, but actually escapes. That's impressive. Oh, but walks right into the Mirana. And, oh my god! She actually get out?
Yeah, she lives.
No way.
Wait, I don't remember.
Oh my god, what the fuck? That was disgusting, man. The other team should have killed Drow like 3 times over there. Oh well. Yeah, meanwhile you guys are getting bottom.
Dire's top tower, Radiant's bottom tower has fallen. Dire's structures are fortified. Are scanning.
Okay.
Just passive at this point again.
Yep. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, you guys have all of your ultimates up right now, so what I would actually do in this scenario is look for a smoke. You've got one in your inventory right now, but I think I would, like, you know, just do it. Just get in on them. Just try to find a pick, because the easiest way to break high ground is to kill their heroes so they can't defend high ground, right?
Right.
Going in 5v5 to a high ground it's possible, and especially when you're at a lead like this, you can slowly chip it out, but it's always easier to just find a pick. So you know, if I was you, I would have just called the team to like walk back into the river, find a smoke, and then like find a Juggernaut or find the Underlord or something like that, and that just takes away a lot of their ability to de-push. But I mean, this is totally fine too. Like I said, your team is very good at just kind of setting up on a lane, running up there with the Ravage, and just being ready to go. So I don't think this is a totally bad call. You know, the Medusa's standing up front. She's tanking with the Aegis. This is exactly what you want to do. We're slowly chipping it out. Firestorm's getting thrown. Wave comes in. Okay, so you got a good Ravage initiation there. Caught 4 heroes right to the Medusa Scream. Mirana's gonna go down quick. Underlord's in a bad spot. He gets caught
I think it
up.
was the buybacks here. Like maybe this is where it all went south for us. Was they bought back and we failed to back correctly when we should have. We let them all buy back and come and take another fight.
I think this is actually okay. So there's 2 buybacks on the field now. I think, okay, yeah, now is when you want to back out. Your Earth Spirit's in too deep. Yeah, if you guys keep attacking here, this is definitely, okay, yeah. So attacking the tower right here was definitely a mistake. As soon as you saw those 2 buybacks come out, you get out. But this is actually still fine. Like, you lost your 3 lowest net worth heroes on your team in exchange for free buybacks on the other team's course.
Right.
which is huge. Like if we look at the net worth graph over the last couple minutes here, it is shot from that 4K I was talking about down to 7,500, and XP has almost doubled, or XP advantage has almost doubled as well. So you guys are actually in a really solid position. I would not take that fight or the kill total that's on the board right now as any indicator that you guys are in a bad spot. Drow ends up in a bit of trouble here because she used her Hurricane Pike to maneuver instead of as security, but she's actually going to escape that just fine. Alright. This fight is super awkward. The other team went so deep for something really dumb. They lose 2 heroes and they get 2 in exchange, so that actually went a lot better than it should have. But yeah, I think their general idea of just like counter pressure as soon as the Ravage is down was a good idea. They just executed it poorly and they found the wrong hero. That Underlord just went too he went really early. He went on the Drow long before any of his heroes were nearby to help, and he's not going to get that kill on his own.
Right. And really quickly, how do you generally do your drafts? Like, do you set up for like early off lanes? Do you try to counterpick the off lanes with the carries? Mainly open up with supports? Because I've got a lot of argument about this on how to do it.
Yeah, I'll actually.
We don't do it the same every game, but that's something maybe later. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's something I'll talk to you about in a second. Like, I'll just finish going through this replay and then I'll just talk about general draft strategy afterwards, because I do have a very formulaic way that I do my drafts, and I think it's solid. So. You guys finally crack high ground here at 26 minutes. That's pretty solid. You're gonna get the shrines and just kind of make yourself secure. Okay, so your Deuce actually did go for Scotty, which is definitely the right build. Going Linkage after this. Alright, so they come into you in pretty bad position. Witch Doctor's the first person to go down. Juggernaut finds an Omni Slash, but can't pull it through. Oh yeah, you guys are doing a ton of damage here. This is... Ooh, alright. Rana comes in from the back lines, finds an arrow, gets that kill.
Like right now, we already have 2 down without buybacks.
Yeah, so...
Master.
So this is a little frustrating because they're kind of like making a decent call in that they want to fight you outside of their base so that you can't slowly chip it away. Because up until that point, your Medusa was just slowly like stepping up on a high ground, taking a couple shots, backing up, and that's unsustainable for them. They're just going to lose buildings if they let that happen.
Right.
So, you know, they said, all right, we got to get out of our base. We got to fight them on open terrain and make sure that they can't get buildings while they're taking these fights. And because these fights are coming out as a pretty even trade, it's kind of slowing this game down a little bit, which is actually good for you guys. Like I would argue that your late game is better, and especially with the Medusa. Like Medusa is basically the hardest carry in the game. So getting your Dusa even more farm is perfect. I do think actually going for this Lincoln's is a huge mistake. It's a really bad item for this scenario, and right now your Dusa wants to be able to do more damage because, as you saw in that fight, so much of your damage was getting mitigated by the Underlord's Guardian Greaves and by his Crimson Guard. His Crimson Guard block is just doing insane work against the only 2 heroes on your team that do damage, which are the Dusa and the Drow.
Right.
So Dusa needs something to cut through that. So in this scenario, I would start looking at, like, you know, Bloodthorn, Daedalus, even Butterfly, or Monkey King Bar. Especially because, like, once she gets to 25, she can get that split shot uses modifiers talent, and getting a Monkey King Bar with that just means that every single attack on every single hero has a chance to do 60 bonus damage, and that's pure, and it cuts through all of that mitigation. So looking for an item build like that was probably what you guys wanted to do there. Waiting and going for the next Roche is a good call. They scout it with the Rocket Flare. I think backing out is probably the right call for the moment. You guys don't have a ton of vision. You dewarded them, but you don't have a lot of your own vision. And you're actually holding on to a couple obs here. I would throw them down. You want to be able to see when these guys are coming down the hill here. Like, you'd be able to see the Underlord if you had a obs up there. So they come in on the Medusa. You get a really good Ravage. That Juggernaut's going to go down on this first thing. Actually, Roshan gets the kill there. That's hilarious. They back away. Yeah, that was a pretty clean fight. You get the Juggernaut. They don't want to come in on this. Are they still going to go? Okay. All right. Yeah. So I think after that fight, you were in a really good position, but walking all of your heroes in to help with the Roche as though the other team couldn't fight.
And then Firestorm just destroyed us.
Yeah, like, I think having 2 heroes in the pit is okay. Either, like, Tide and Medusa or, like, a Drow and Medusa, as long as they're split. But right here, you literally walk 4 heroes in, and you're all in Firestorm range, and you're all in Pit of Malice range. So 3 of you are going to get rooted here on top of a Firestorm. Roshan is beating on Tide Hunter, who is also getting Firestorm, and he's going to die instantly. And then Mirana just jumps in for the cleanup job. So 2 big points here. Firstly, you know, don't walk everyone into the pit like that when the other team is still lurking. But number 2, and more importantly, is get your frickin' wards down, because you would know that they were coming and that you were in danger, and you wouldn't have walked into the pit if you had seen 5 heroes on the side ground here. And the other team actually didn't even drop a sentry in all of this. Like, typically, if you're coming in as the Radiant team here, you're going to drop a sentry right on this spot to make sure that the other team can't see you. But like, they didn't do that, and even if they do that, to deward an obs that's sitting right here, they have to break their own smoke or just reveal that they're there. You have to walk up, right? So even if it gets dewarded, throwing an obs up here is super critical to being able to take that Roche, and because you didn't, this wipe happens.
Right.
So yeah, the other team finds themselves back in this game for sure. That was a huge swing for them. They're up 6 kills. And even though the net worth graph is in your guys'... Oh, actually, it's still technically in your guys' favor. It was up to about 7,500, and then it plummets to probably about 2,500. So they got about 5k net worth there, but you guys are still in the lead. XP shoots way in their direction, but XP isn't as important as gold, especially around this point in the game where everyone is just getting... everyone already has their skills maxed out. Alright, so they come, they approach your high ground here. Alright, swap people out. No Ravage for 30 seconds, so you guys are still kind of waiting and stalling. I think this is a decent hold. You shoot them away, they're not going to your base. Your Medusa's going to get back up, and you guys can go.
And that right there, I feel like that was the fight that really decided, like, that pretty much said we were no longer in control of the game.
Yeah.
Because everything we did from that point is kind of reactionary.
Yeah, and I mean, so that's so that was the next point that I was about to make, was that as soon as you get into a position like that, the worst thing you can do is let off the gas and let the other team come to you, because, like, unless you're down 2 racks and you're just waiting for the other team to come and hit your last one, you do still have control of this game. You have both of your shrines, the other team doesn't. You have, you do still technically have a net worth lead, and the other team doesn't. So, you know, use that, right? Like, you guys, okay, so I was just gonna say, you guys should be smoking right now, and you do actually smoke up right as I say that, so, so this is a good maneuver. You basically just want to reestablish your control, right? Because you said you feel like you don't have control, and you don't, but you can get it back fairly easily by doing something like this, maneuvering onto the map, and then getting wards up, right? Like, you have 1 ward in their jungle, and actually, okay, you find the Juggernaut here. This is an easy kill. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so this is exactly what you should have done, right? Like, you smoke up, you find them, you get your control back in the game. You should place another aggressive ward there. You've got 1 in your inventory, and you're kind of just walking back to farm a wave. I would have gotten that ward just up on the ward stone to the left there. But that's not a huge deal. You guys are rotating back around to the barracks that you wanted to go on. We'll see how this plays out once you get up here. I think you guys are pretty low on detection for fighting into a Marana. You've got 1,400 gold as the Witch Doctor, but you don't have any sentries, and there's only 1 dust on the Earth Spirit. So if they Moonlight Shadow into you guys in this fight, you know, you'll probably see 1 or 2 heroes, but as soon as that dust wears off, that fight is going to go south. Your position really far forward here, and you actually just get killed just straight up because you were walking too far forward. You shouldn't have left the high ground up here. Fight breaks out. The Ravage is okay. The Medusa... Yeah. The Medusa's just tanking everything, doesn't care. Again, they're Moonlight Shadowed, and you don't see these guys approaching you because there's no detection up. So they get in here. Tidehunter's a little too far forward. Clock finds a good hook shot onto the Drow, and she can't get out. Okay, and that gets yeah, and that gets Drow caught so that the Marana can just do damage. And then everything kind of falls apart from there because your backline falls. So, you know, I think
right here, this is the last time we're ever really knocking at their base. Everything at this point on is pretty much them finding us, them killing us, us reacting to them ganking us. Everything at this point, from this point, is just them completely controlling the game.
Yeah, and so honestly, I would say, like, I don't think you guys played this game super poorly. I think you guys had a reasonable idea of how to get on the map, play your draft, find picks, find map control. I think you just really failed at going high ground, which is a very, very tough thing to do. Lots of teams have trouble with going high ground. Like, even my team personally, I played a tournament this last weekend, and we had so many games where we just had an impossible time going high ground. We took games to 60 minutes just throwing bodies at a high ground because we just couldn't do it. So it is tough, and the other team does have reasonable D-push. Not incredible, but the Underlord just always makes it hard to go up hills.
Yeah, the draw strat into the Underlord is very difficult.
Yeah, and so, like, I think, honestly, like, if we go back to each of those high ground pushes, we could watch specifically how it played out. I think in this last one, like, you being forward and getting caught was a big deal. It means your team didn't have heals, it didn't have stuns, and it forced your Tidehunter to do a very aggressive Ravage instead of just holding the Ravage and letting Medusa hit the barracks. He saw that a teammate was dying and said, okay, we got to do this fight, and he blinked and Ravaged.
Right.
And so I think just having you way further back, having the Drow, or having the Medusa further up, and then having the Drow kind of in a middling position where she kind of pokes up here and there is a little bit more what you want to do. Your just kind of your team fight organization, not your team fight prep and your positioning was a little bit off. And I think in both scenarios where you went up into this high ground, that was the problem.
Right.
I think the first time you got a really good Ravage on like 4 heroes, but I think you guys should have been a little bit more patient because I don't think you ever had to Ravage. I think if in both of those scenarios you just put Medusa on the high ground and she just attacked the racks, you kind of do what you did on that very first bait on Medusa at mid, where you just let her sit there and farm, and then if they go on her, she's going to survive. She's got a Scotty, she's got her mana shield, she's going to live. And so when she survives the initial burst, then you Ravage and follow it up afterwards, when you force the enemy into being in a bad position. But I think you guys were really, like, you were hoping to find a fight where you kill them all so that you can get the buildings. But you can get the buildings and force them to come into you, right? Like, they're on the clock because you're the one hitting their buildings.
Right.
So just pay a little bit more attention to that, especially in your future games. Like, I think that's one of the things that a lot of teams struggle with when they struggle with going high ground, is that they feel like they have to take a fight on the enemy high ground, whereas, you know, a lot of times, it doesn't matter what your team is. You know, if you've got a Juggernaut, send him onto the high ground, have him spin and hit the tower, and then just back up. If you got your Medusa, like I said, put her on the high ground, let her attack, let them come onto the Dusa. If you've got a Naix, he fucking rages, he hits the towers. If you've got a Gyrocopter, you just put him in there, and then as soon as he gets gone on, he just calls down. Or BKBs, you have 4 staffs ready to pull him out. I think that's what you'll see if you watch a lot of pro games, is that they'll be very patient about shipping out 100, 200 damage on a tower at a time, instead of trying to make a full 5v5 high ground engagement happen, because it's just so hard to work. But yeah, I think that's the gist of this game. Like, I'm seeing things slow down from you guys here. If I were you in this scenario, I would also just start looking for another smoke like you did the first time, because you are losing map control, so get it back by smoking. You've got 2 wards in your inventory. Even if you smoke and find no one, you can get aggressive wards up in their base, you can deward their ward stones, and this is what they're doing that you're not right now. Like, they smoke up 5 heroes, they go starting to look for, they start going to look for picks, and I don't think they're going to find anyone here. Yeah, they don't find anyone, but they get out on the map, they get an aggressive ward up, they've got a ward near your base, and they're starting to take away some of your farming position and force you into other spots. So yeah, I think a couple major points from this game that we're looking at is, like, 1, I think the Dusa had a blunder in her item build. I think 2, you guys weren't patient enough going high ground. 3, you had that really uncomfortable Roche fight where you didn't have the vision up and you put a bunch of heroes in the pit and you got caught by the Underlord. And then 4, just paying attention to how the lanes are playing out, maybe getting your 4 position a little bit more active on the map, hitting those other lanes, because, like I said, a lot of the times early on when you were in that try scenario, the Earth Spirit wasn't the make or break in a lot of those plays. I think the lane plays out pretty similarly, if not identical, with or without the Earth Spirit there, so just get him on the map and have him doing more shit.
Right.
So yeah, let's pop out of this game, and I'll just kind of talk to you for a brief bit about just my general drafting strategy, and then that's pretty much our hour. So, what I would suggest, first and foremost, when I'm talking drafting strategy, is, well, like, just knowing the meta, because it changes every single patch. I used to be very, very adamant about making sure that our mid player had a good matchup, because 1v1 mid was such an intense battle, but nowadays it's a lot more of a kind of
3v3.
Yeah, well, like, yeah, you either
Not
get
every
supports
game, but-
rotating in, or it's just a bit more of a passive thing. Like, you saw that game, Marana and Dusa just traded farm, and at 10 minutes they both had roughly 60-70 CS, and they both just walked away from the lane and did their own thing. Medusa farmed, Marana ganked. So I think that's a lot of how mid lane is going to play out now, and as such, I prioritize carry matchups very high in my drafts. I always make sure that I last pick my carry because it is
Really, your carry over the mid laner?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many heroes that are in meta right now in mid lane that are super safe to matchups. You know, like SF, Tinker, OD, Queen of Pain, Puck are all kind of the popular mid laners right now, and none of them have direct one-to-one counters, I feel. You know, previously it was like, you know, you get these like, I guess Puck isn't as popular nowadays, but when Puck was popular, you had a few heroes that shit on him and a few heroes that he shit on. And so it was like very important that you got that matchup, especially because your supports weren't going to be rotating in to make that lane a little bit easier. But nowadays, I think you're a lot more free to pick. Like I said, a lot of these heroes are very stable, right? Like, what really shits on Adusa? Not too much. She just farms, she throws her snake, and that's it. What really messes with, you know, a Queen of Pain? Not much. She just last hits and she blinks out if she's in trouble. And you're like, you know, what really shits on an OD? It's like, there's not too much that you can do. Like, maybe a sniper, maybe a razor or something, you know? But it's hard to find.
That's nothing a one band can't fix.
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard to find those matchups where you will lose mid on your draft. So typically, like, I mean, mid matchups are still important. I'll usually leave those for fourth pick, but I typically try to get my carry matchup to be the most important thing. So first thing I do in basically every draft is in my first phase I look for team fight and control. And because personally I have a few heroes that I value very, very highly in this meta. Naga Siren is one of them, Elder Titan is the other one, and then there's a few other secondary heroes that I look at. Tusk, Omni Knight, Underlord, and Tidehunter are all kind of in there. And all of those heroes do have some general synergy together.
Traditionally, Tidehunter is a hero we first phase frequently, almost all the time.
Yeah, and
I don't know if it's
yeah,
like
that
high up, but we do. Like, that's a hero we almost always either first ban or first pick.
Yeah, and I mean, Tidehunter is just a super stable hero. He's a hero that can't really be countered in a draft. The only thing that I could think of that really just dumpsters Tidehunter is Razor. And even then, you can adapt for that. You can just kind of play around it. So like, when I look at a Tidehunter, it's totally a first phaseable hero. He gives you control. He gives you, you know, heals because he's going to buy a mechanism, and he gives you a lot of team fight. And he's pretty much impervious to his lane being completely crushed. So I think that's really solid. So what I would typically look for you guys is, like, you know, get a 4 or 5 position that's going to contribute to that. If you're going to pick Tidehunter a lot, then your strategy should revolve around pushing, around being around that mechanism, being around that team fight, and playing off of cooldowns, because that's just what Tidehunter does. So, so, you know, in my last tournament that I ran last weekend, basically what we first phased almost every game was either Elder Titan into so it was a combination of Elder Titan, Tidehunter, Disruptor, and Naga Siren. So we would go for like a 4 position that has setup like Elder Titan or Naga, and then we would go into a offlaner that has a lot of team fight and control. So we would go into like Underlord, Tidehunter, or you know, like Sand King or something can work as well. And we didn't vary from that quite a bit. Very much. We had one game where the other team banned that out for us, so we went for Shaman and Night Stalker in the first phase, because it just gives us push, it gives us a lot of control, it gives us a lot of ganking potential, etc.
Right.
But, you know, that's just my team. Whatever works for you guys, but generally look for that, like I said, that 4 or 5 position that offers some control, and then probably your offlaner. You want to have one support pick in your pocket just to adapt if the other team picks an offlaner that's really gonna mess with you. Because, you know, like in a scenario where, for example, like I said, that draft where we went like Night Stalker Shaman, that kind of leaves us vulnerable to a couple offlaner picks that deal really well with Shaman. So going for like a tiny offlane for them would have actually been pretty good. It's kind of hard for either of those heroes to do too much to tiny unless there's like a really aggressive carry on board. And like maybe a Beastmaster or a Brewmaster or something like that, it gets tough for those heroes to do that. So we left ourselves open to having one of those things done to us by committing both support picks in the first phase. So yeah, just like I would typically go support and offlaner in the first phase.
Right.
Then once you're in the second phase, I would basically just look at what they've drafted and ban out anything that you're scared of from those picks. So, for example, if we have like I said, that other opening I was talking about, if we went ET Tidehunter in the first phase, it's like, okay, this team has a lot of stuns, they have a lot of tankiness, and they're going to be pushing down our towers really hard. So if I was looking at that, I would start banning out core heroes that really contribute to that. So maybe Juggernaut, maybe Luna, maybe what else? Maybe something like a what else am I looking at here? Maybe like Luna. Luna, Witch Doctor, even like a Winter Wyvern or something like that. Something that really reinforces that push, gives you some heal, gives you some sustain, gives you some team fight.
And what's your personal opinion, just real quick side note on Winter Wyvern, because that's a hero I've been a fan of, but recently I don't know, like I enjoy the hero, but I feel like it's not something you could just blindly pick. It's more like something you have to work around.
I think she is very, very strong. She hasn't been seeing a lot of pro play recently, but I really liked her as a flex pick because I used to play her offlane a ton. And so getting her first phase and then switching up her position actually threw off a lot of my opponents and just gave me like a clear draft advantage just because they didn't know her roles. But that is kind of a niche thing, and it takes understanding. It takes somebody who's practiced a lot on offlane Wyvern to make it work. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that as like your go-to strategy is like, oh, we can always just put it offlane, because it's tough to pull off. But in general, I think she is kind of just a hero that has utility as a super hard counter pick. She's one of those heroes that you can kind of like, sometimes the other team accidentally drafts a team that Winter Wyvern just demolishes.
Right.
And there's a few heroes like that in the game, like Huskar, it's like, oh, the other team picked 5 magic damage heroes, just go Huskar, you win the game. It's like, the other team has no AoE clear, pick a Broodmother, you just won the game, right? Like, So there's a few of those heroes in the game, and I think Winter Wyvern is kind of a soft hero like that. If the other team picks too much magic damage and not enough, or if they pick too much physical damage and not enough magical, you just go Wyvern and you win the game. Especially if they have a lot of melee heroes, like if they have, like an Underlord offlane, a Gyrocopter, or like not a Gyrocopter, but like a Juggernaut safe lane, and then like, something goofy mid, like a fucking like a Doom or a PA or some shit, like they go something like that, you just press Wyvern and you win. Like that's just it. So she has a lot of really strong utility against those physical damage heroes. She obviously has a magic immunity piercing stuns. She's amazing against Juggernaut. She's amazing against Nakes. She's just good against anything that does high amounts of physical damage. But again, if you pick it into a Skywrath Mage, you can't ever use your heal without killing your own hero. So it's just something to look out for. I think she's super strong. I really like playing her a ton. I've got a stupidly high win rate on her and with her in pubs. But I think that's mostly just because I pick her when I see that the other team has a draft that is 100% counterpicked by Wyvern.
And a lot of the times where I'd want to pick it, like generally the position 5 is something you pick early. So most of the times when that's good, that they have those summons, they have that high physical damage, they have what you need for the Winter Wyvern to be that god tier pick. Generally, you already have that 5 position pick.
Yeah, and so that's actually why I was talking in my draft strategy here about picking your 4 position in your offlane first, because I think it is actually pretty relevant to get a support that can A, deal with the offlaner, but B, offer some utility in shutting down the enemy carry. So I think the 4 position is the most impervious to counters, because your Clockwork, your ETs, your Tuskars, your Night Stalkers, those are all heroes that are going to be hitting the map, roaming around, and fighting other heroes, right? Like they don't ever find themselves in a scenario where the other 4 position is going to be countering them. Like there's not really ever a scenario where that Night Stalker and Clockwork run into each other in the lane and just start beating on each other, because either of them can just run away and walk away, and they're not farming, so they're not interrupting each other's farm. So it's like, so I think that is the probably the ideal first pick is getting your 4 position, because
Right.
it's it's just gonna do its own thing regardless of what else is on the map. And sometimes it gets countered by the other team picking a lot of stuff that is really secure in its lanes. Like if you're an Earthshaker 4 position and you're walking around, the other team's mid lane is a Quap, their safe lane is a Faceless Void, and their off lane is a Magnus, you can't kill a single goddamn hero on the map. Like, you're pointless.
Useless.
Yeah,
Right.
so like, go stack and pull, I guess. And that's kind of the way you counter a 4 position. But I mean, if that's the case, then their lanes are gonna be are just gonna be kind of bad in the first place.
Right.
So typically 4 position first. I think going to your offlaner second is usually solid. Sometimes you can go for your 5. Like I said, like we were running the Naga Disruptor combo a lot in our last tournament, and that is a perfectly acceptable first pick because there's basically no hero that avoids that combo mid game. Like those 2 heroes just jump on and kill anybody they want.
Right.
So that's pretty secure, and of course our opponents tried to pick stuff that dealt with Disruptor well in the laning phase. They picked like Tide Hunters and shit that could kind of just like shrug off the damage and walk away from it. And so that is a little bit tough, but yeah, 4 position off lane I think are the best ways to start. Then you use your second phase of bans to kind of take out the cores that you're worried about, cores that you think really play well against the strategy that you're trying to run, and basically just base your bans around what the other team has shown in their draft as well. If they've already picked their mid hero, if they just picked a SF first phase because they're really confident in it, obviously you're not banning mid heroes, so just focus on the other core positions, focus on the mid lane, focus on the off lane if you need to. And
Right.
then the second phase is where things get a little tricky and you start trying to decide what is the higher priority amidst your draft. So most of the times I'll pick my 5 position in the third pick, but occasionally we'll also go for our mid hero if we know what our mid hero is, and again if it's one of those safe heroes that can't really be countered. Like if you just want to pick a Tinker third, there's not a ton the other team's going to be able to do to deal with that. There's not any mid hero that's going to explicitly just dump on it. Same with like an SF or something like that. And especially as you get higher ranked, you start getting teams that are so confident in their ability to play a hero that they don't mind picking it into counters. So it becomes a race to just get that hero on your team before the other team gets it on theirs, right? So
Right.
sometimes you'll just pick an SF third just because you know your team plays it well and you want to have it on your side.
Right.
And then your 4 position is, like I said, either your mid or your support, depending on what comes out. I think third picking the support is probably the most typical way to do it, but again, in that scenario I just described, you can get your mid there. But yeah, so your support should be something that kind of rounds out your draft, contributes well to the other things that your team has on the board already. So if you're, like I said, like when we pick the ET a lot, we look at other heroes that can set up on top of it. So that comes in the form of like heroes like Disruptor, heroes like Ancient Apparition. Sometimes it's like a Witch Doctor or a Winter Wyvern or something like that. Something that can really utilize the setup from the stomp. But again, that can be different for every single draft. Sometimes you go for like, your early 4 position is like a Bane, and it's like, okay, so maybe your 5 position is something that can really utilize that setup stun. Ancient Apparition is good for that. You can get a Coddle and just like blast the waves on top of it. You can get an easy setup for a Lion stun, like whatever you want, right? Like just kind of build some synergy in your draft, build some cohesion, and fill in the holes that you have. So make sure you have some healing. Make sure you have enough stuns on your team, and then make sure that you're kind of catering to whatever your team does well or doesn't do well. So if you need D push or you need push, getting a Keeper of the Light is good. If you need to if you need to hit towers, make sure you get a Shadow Shaman. If you need to be defensive, if you need to make sure that your core is being kept alive, get a Winter Wyvern or a Witch Doctor or a Shadow Demon or something like that.
Right.
Then finally, your last phase is basically the ban that tries to nail the hero that you think the other team is like relying on, right? Because your last pick is going to be the thing that makes or breaks the draft. And for you guys, in
that draw pick kind of broke the draft.
Yeah, and so the other team wants to ban out the thing that they think could optimally make your draft just crush them. And I believe in that draft that we were just looking at, they banned out a CK, which was one of the heroes that I said would have been a good pick there because it kind of fits into that early aggression, early tower hitting, and it's something they don't have an answer to.
And from what I keep hearing you suggest, Illusion here, is you don't feel like the Underlord just gets rid of them as a viable option? Like Underlord kind of takes out the CK, takes out the PL.
He takes out the CK for sure because Underlord, like he does percentage health damage, which means that the tankiness of the CK illusions just doesn't matter.
Right.
And he is really good at clearing them. But I think Phantom Lancer is a bit of a special illusion hero because he's
constantly producing.
Yeah, he's constantly producing them. So it's never a scenario where like, you know, you make your illusions and then they just disappear. That just kind of doesn't matter. Yeah, because as soon as you get on top of somebody, you can just take them out. And like with Doppelganger, you can reposition your illusions anywhere you want, right? Like if you get caught in a firestorm, you just Doppelganger to the other side of it and you start fighting, and if you know that's not a problem. So PL was, like I said, I think probably the ideal pick in that scenario, because he shits on every single other hero in their draft. The Underlord is the only one who's questionable, and really you can just deal with him once you've killed everybody else.
Right.
Because he can't really lock you down. Like he throws a Pit of Malice, but you get out of that in a second, and you just, you know, you can Manta style it off and jump away, and you're fine. So yeah. I think, yeah, like I said, that last pick is the thing that makes or breaks your draft. So just look at the other team's draft and kind of do this process that I've been talking about, where you look at the qualities of each hero. You look at, like, you know, okay, we have a Tidehunter who provides us with some stability, some teamfight, some push. We have some Shadow Shaman that helps us push. He's got a lot of lockdown. We have a Night Stalker as our 4th position. He offers us a silence, and he offers us a slow, and he gives us a lot of vision. So we have a really secure team fight to be able to push down towers. What hero does that? All right, we're looking at Luna, we're looking at Jug, we're looking at, you know, maybe like a Troll Warlord or a Terrorblade. So just consider all those factors and try to build up an idea of the type of hero the other team wants to build, and then just pick the scariest hero of that bunch, you know? Maybe you don't have any answers to illusions, so, you know, even though Jug's scary, Terrorblade is scarier because he has illusions and you can't deal with them. So get rid of that hero. So yeah, you use that last ban that way, and then your final pick is kind of the opposite of that. You look at what your draft needs, what's good against theirs, and you pick that thing to round it out. So usually it's your carry, and this comes around to the final point I was going to make, is that taking second pick in drafts now, right now, I think is actually really, really strong. I used to be a first pick
over first pick.
Yeah, I used to be a first pick diehard, but the way they've rearranged the drafts, you get the 2 back-to-back picks in the first phase, and then as well you also get the final pick of the draft, which is super significant, especially since I've been talking about like this carry matchup being so important. In the first phase, because like personally me, I rely on a lot of these combos and teamfight setups in my first phase of the draft. So I look at, you know, like I said, if I want to get a Naga Siren Disruptor, it's a lot better to get it back-to-back than to try to get it as the first pick and then leave the other team 2 picks to deal with that, right? Like, if I pick a Naga Siren, the other team's going to pick, like, you know, ET Disruptor. And it's like, okay, now I don't
there
have...
goes your Disruptor.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I actually prefer having the 2 picks back-to-back because it lets me find one big combo or one big synergistic pair of heroes that guarantees me a solid draft strategy to build from. And then, at the back end of the draft, you also get the very last pick, which means that you get the ideal carry matchup, right? Like, the other team has to show you their full 5 heroes before you make your last pick. And then you can make the best decision you can. Like I said, there's a lot of heroes that I think can kind of break a draft right now. I think, like I said, like, Terrorblade and PL are in a really good spot, so if they're missing illusion counters, that's great. If they're missing lockdown, you can go for something like a... you know, a Faceless Void or an Anti-Mage or like even like a Monkey King or something dumb like that. There's you know, there's a lot of ways that I think you can kind of screw somebody else's draft by just having a really intelligent last pick. So grabbing second pick, I think is optimal. I did that in basically every single game I had the option to in that tournament last weekend, and it worked out really well for me. So that's something I would look out for. Yeah. I think that's about all the time we got, so definitely. I'm gonna have to cut it off. But you know, it was a good session, and if you don't mind, it would be really awesome if you could leave me a review on Dota Coach, because that directly ups my notoriety on the website and gets me more students. So
right, for sure.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, that would be awesome. And otherwise, yeah, I hope that helped, and hope your next few games go a little bit better.
Yeah, it definitely did. I do appreciate it.
For sure.
Yeah, I'll leave a review.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, man. And yeah, if you ever want my help again, let me know. And you know, I'm happy to look through your team's replays. I do work with teams straight up as well. Like, I've done coaching sessions where we just get all 5 people in, and we just look over games, kind of the same way you and I just did here. But you know, I can kind of speak to every single person about the things that they did, the decisions they made. So that's something your team's looking for. Let me know. It's the same rate as any other time. But yeah.
Definitely.
Cheers, man.
Like, and just, you know, I have a couple different teams in my Discord that we all do 82L, things like that. We're all trying to get a little more competitive. Like Cybonic. Do you know Cybonic?
Yep.
Yeah. He's making a team. We have a couple other guys. They're all making teams. So I might, if you're interested, I might be able to, if they're interested in coaching, I might be able to.
Yeah, for sure, man. I love the 82L. I was casting with them since like season 1. I know all the admins and stuff. I meet up with them at TI every year, so really familiar with the whole community there. So I'm sure I know a handful of people you play with. But
nice, good deal. Well, once again, I appreciate it. Yep. Thanks. We went over the time a little bit. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks, man.
Right, yeah. Cheers. You have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Alright, and okay, before I get the rest of my games going, I'm just gonna go take a quick shower because I feel absolutely disgusting, and I just kind of woke up and hopped right into this coaching session. But I'm gonna go take a quick shower. I'll be like 5-10 minutes, and then we'll keep the stream going. I'll be gaming basically all night tonight, so I've got like a good 8-hour stream ahead of me. So make sure to stick around, or just at least tune in a little bit, and then we'll get that going. Cheers, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'm not gonna shut off the stream. I'll just be right back.